Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Leadership to Wealth podcast. On today's show, we have a vice president of schools for the John Gordon Companies. He leads the energy bus for schools and the Power of Positive school groups. And his mission is to help schools create a positive culture that creates that of creativity. And what I really want to share with you guys about today's episode is that he gets into a lot of different areas for what it's like for teachers and the faculty and what they are dealing with and how they can take control. And for that matter, how any of us can take control of things like our emotions in these troubling times, how to really get into it and what it takes to be a leader with all of the perhaps negative forces that are coming at us each and every day. And so on today's show, I really want to welcome and introduce to you guys Dr. Jim Van Allen. Dr. Jim Van Allen, thank you for coming on the show today.
Love the energy. Love it. Love it. That sounds good.
So I'm glad to have you on. I just started to allude to this as we were prepping for this. Is that you have chosen a really interesting and perhaps what's the word? I think you're a bit of a sadist because you are building in an area. Yeah, you enjoy pain because you're building in an area that I think, or perhaps many of us think, is broken. So before we just kind of talk about what you're doing right now in terms of business and the energy bus, before we get into that, can you give us the viewers a little bit of background on yourself and just kind of give us a quick synopsis of where you're from and where you are now?
Sure. So my background is, I'm originally from Florida, and growing up, I was always really into speaking and communication and those types of things. I was always the guy that the other classmates would point to and say, "All right, you're going to do the group presentation. You're going to present for us," right? So it was always sort of a natural fit for me to get into something along the lines of communication and public speaking. So I went to the University of Florida, and I thought I was going to be a public relations major and get into PR for a living because there really wasn't a degree for being a professional speaker. That's what I wanted to be, really. I wanted to be the keynote speaker. I wanted to be that guy traveling around and doing this. But there wasn't that job. There wasn't that career. There wasn't that major, right?
You wanted to be that guy.
Yes, who you see there. That's who I had seen on stage. I grew up going to conferences, and as a kid, as a teenager, going to conferences and seeing that speaker and being like, that's a cool job. How can I do that? But there wasn't a major for it. So halfway through my collegiate career, some friends of mine had seen an author. His name is John Gordon speaking in 2006. And they said, "Jim, he's only an hour and a half from you. You should email him and see what happens. We know you want to be a speaker." So I threw caution to the wind and emailed him, and he responded. And that was 15 years ago. And we talked that day in 2006, and I interned for him my last 2 years at UF. And now I'm the vice president of schools for his very, very growing company. John is a top 5 speaker in the United States, and I'm happy to work right alongside him growing his education division. And it's humbling to me because of just that dream I had when I was younger, and now being one of the rare few to say, I am literally doing exactly what I set out to do. It wasn't easy. It was not a direct path. There's some more to the story from when I interned for him to now. But for sure, I enjoyed every bit of the process leading up to this point.
Wow. Yeah. That is really interesting that when you were younger, you you were like, yeah, you were the guy that everyone looked to be in communications, and lo and behold, you have come out and done that, because oftentimes we start in one place and then we move along and kind of realize most of us have no idea what we want to do later on. Did that just kind of happen naturally for you to make that shift, or or for you to do that, or was it something that as you were in the midst of doing other things, you realized that that was actually it?
Exactly what you just said. So when I entered high school, even middle school, I was telling everybody I wanted to be a doctor. Now I'm a doctor
Yeah.
now, but I'm a PhD. So don't ask me to do any CPR. But I
No
wanted to be
surgery.
no, not at all. I'm like, if they ask for a doctor on the plane, I put my head down. So that's not me. But I wanted to be an MD. I'm like, I want to be a cardiologist. I think it's
Yeah.
because I watched ER growing up. I don't know. But that was the thing. Like, so I went into high school into this medical academy that basically taught you about different jobs in healthcare, and we got to have internships in healthcare and figure out what you wanted to do. And everybody joined this organization called Florida HOSA, which does competitive events in healthcare. So of course I joined it because all your friends are joining it. But of course my teachers kind of directed me towards the public speaking event because she
Mhm.
had seen me do some public speaking in class, just off the cuff as you do. And she's like, no, you need to do this event. And I ended up winning at states and winning at nationals and doing well with it. And that was the moment where I was like, this is fun. And I don't really like this healthcare thing. I don't really like math. I was never very good at it. It was a struggle. Science was interesting, but I could take it or leave it, right? Like, and of course, if you want to be an MD, it's all science, it's all math. So I was sitting there saying at 16, I need to do something else. Like I need to re-examine where I'm headed. And it was speaking. It was always speaking. It always will be. And that's kind of when I put the wheels in motion to shift my thoughts to, or how can I be this great communicator and this great speaker? And that kind of translated getting into college and following that communication path. But I'm glad I had that, that opportunity when I was young, 14, 15, 16, to expose myself to different areas of
Mhm.
life and internships and experiences to say, I like this, I don't like that. And that's why I'm such a big advocate for internships and all those types of things.
Yeah, I get that. I can see that. Now, what's interesting is that at 16, you would see that so clearly. I think that oftentimes what we're seeing now is there's sort of a kids, if I can say that, the people that are younger just really aren't sure where they want to go, and so but everyone around them tells them, "Oh yeah, you can figure it out. Don't worry about it. You don't need to make any decisions yet." You know, they're getting into university, doing courses because okay, I have no idea what I want to do, but they're just doing university, and then they're literally coming out of university, and people are still telling them, you know, yeah, don't worry, you got lots of time to figure out what you want to do with your life. And so more and more people are into their late 20s and 30s before they're even asking them some of these questions. And here you are at 16, or were at 16 asking yourself that question and seeing, yeah, there's a different direction that I need to go.
I've always been driven, and I always admire, and that's always a quality I've admired about leaders, right? Who have a
Mm.
vision. They have a vision and they don't let go of that vision, right? They
Mhm.
understand, and at that, you have to understand at that point in my life too, I was really, so this is going to sound strange, but I had just seen the movie Signs. Remember the movie
Yeah,
Signs?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And it was all about all these random events you thought were happening in the movie. And then all of a sudden at the end of the movie, it made total sense why all these random events were happening. And I discovered, I started looking more into purpose. Like, okay, what's the purpose for all this? Kind of fitting life together. And I know this is 16. I'm supposed to be out chasing girls, and I'm, figuring out what's my purpose. And I was doing both. One well, one not the other. Not very well. You can guess which one I was not doing well in. That was the girl side. But I was just trying to put life together. Like I wanted to do something that made me happy, and I was always very driven. So I always knew I just wanted to have that eye towards what I wanted to do. And it helped me, right? It helped me really have a plan in place. And even in college, when I was a public relations major, I never lost sight of wanting to be a speaker, but I thought I maybe could ride both sides, go the corporate route, but also build a speaking career on the side. So I thought maybe I could do that, So, I always sort of had some contingency plans in place, but when I go around the country now talking to people, I tell that story a lot, and I always go back to vision. Whether you're a leader, whether you're whoever you are, that's going to help orient you and guide you so much if you have something to put your hat on, for sure.
Wow. Well, I can tell you, I literally wrote that down. Leaders don't let go of their vision. Dr. Jim Van Allen. And I was like, I'm going to keep a note of that one and
put it in bold.
Yeah, that's right. And because it really does encapsulate that ability that leaders have, good leaders have, is that ability to hold on to that and keep going in there. Even when the waters get a little rough, they continue to make sure they move in that direction. And obviously those that follow them are able to continue to move in that direction. But I want to just pivot for a second. We'll come back to it like a stalking lion. We'll come back to talking about your past. I want to hear more about that. But what I just want to jump into, because we alluded to you being you liking pain and getting pleasure from that. So I want to come to what you're doing right now with regards to the energy school bus.
Bus for schools.
The energy bus for schools. Sorry, wrong order. And just what you're doing in that area, or what you're doing right now. So can you give us a little bit of some of the details on what you're doing there?
Of course. So John Gordon wrote a book in 2007 called The Energy Bus. And if you're a business leader, if you're an educator, you may have heard of the book. It's been out for 15 years. It's been on the top 10 list of any Wall Street Journal bestseller, New York Times. It's up there with some of the top business fable books that have been out there. And, that's when John and I first met. He just wrote this book and I helped him promote it. So as his intern, obviously. Years go by and I'm doing speaking for him on the side. He can't be everywhere at once. So he sort of used me as his, hey, can you do this when I can't make it? Right. And I said, oh, sure, of course. I'd love to try that. And that grew, almost for a decade or so of me doing that with him. And we had so many requests for schools wanting to use the Energy Bus, this book, in their school as a book study. Just having their teachers read it. And now it was more of these requests of, okay, what else can we do with this material now? The book talks about 10 rules to fuel your life with positive energy. So it's all about positive thinking and how you can build that. So we developed a schools program based on this book, The Energy Bus, that has curriculum that teachers can follow, that schools can follow, that help them to basically do a deep dive into each Energy Bus rule. There's 10 of them throughout the entire year. So they're focused on this book and its concepts throughout the whole year. They're doing discussions, activities, and they're using it to help build a positive campus culture, to build positive leaders, right? To work on the mental health side, the soft skills side of their staff and of their students too. So the program has all these components that help staff and students just think more positive using the rules from the Energy Bus book.
Yeah.
And I've had the opportunity to lead the program the last almost 2 years, and we have schools that are nationwide, right? All over the entire country using the programming. And of course, a lot of them want a trainer, right? Hey, we want somebody to come in and speak to all of our staff. So I'll do that. There's also other schools and companies out there who don't necessarily want the Energy Bus programming, but they want a speaker because it's a professional development day. So, I mean, you name the audience, the style, the location, and it's odds are after a decade plus, I've been in a situation, right?
Yeah.
From a handful of people to 3,000 to any setting. And if that doesn't cause pain and anxiety, as you've alluded to, I don't know what will. So at this point, I can pretty much go anywhere, see any audience. And I'm not trying, it's not a brag. It's more of an experience, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm a Bucks fan. I'm from Tampa. So Tom Brady can go into any stadium, anytime, playoff, regular season, and probably do well, right?
Yeah.
Still preparing, but you know, it's not, you're not being phased as much anymore. I think that just comes from experience, right?
Yeah.
Experience. So I don't really feel the pain anymore as somebody might, but I do definitely think, but what the thing is that every audience is different. So that breeds some performance anxiety because you trust yourself in your preparation, your material, but you never know how an audience may react. You can't always forecast that. So that always leaves a little bit of anxiety that you have to, it kind of keeps you on your toes as you're going into various schools and events, so to speak.
Are you still doing a lot of in-person these days, considering, what we've been going through with regards to COVID?
Yeah, so luckily the in-person engagements picked up starting June of this year, 2021. And I was probably the busiest I've ever been the last 6 months. And more to come on the horizon. Was just in New York last week, Dallas coming up, Kentucky, Texas, Ohio, all between now and February. So it's definitely picked up quite a bit, and I'm thankful for that. Because for about a year before that, it was all virtual, right? It was all virtual. And while virtual has had its place and was a means to an end, that you needed it during the 2020 time, I'm glad to be past that because it's nothing like a live audience.
Yeah. I've done both. Obviously, I do lots of speaking online and with people, but I've done a lot of speaking in public as well. And so it is a very different medium, and there is something to being able to feed off of a crowd to get the sense of where they are. You're talking, and okay, they're not getting what I'm saying. All right, let me go a little bit further. Or, okay, they're completely with me, and you can go continue on. Whereas in this remote format, you're not getting that feedback. So it's completely different. The reason that I really was thinking, man, this guy must love pain, is because I don't know if there are many areas in our society that have held on to the past like our school systems. I mean, often most people, most parents would say the school systems are broken, and everything from methods and that. So when I hear you talking about going in and trying to bring energy to the school systems, I'm thinking the first thought that came to my mind is, yeah, they want the energy, but nobody wants to get on the bus. So I'm wondering what that experience is like for you, because you're literally bringing a new mental attitude to an area that has resisted change for I don't know, 50 years.
You're right. And I'll tell what I will say to that, though, in saying all that, the teachers, if you do a good job and you make the material relevant to them, and you talk with them, not at them, you include them in the conversation, they're thankful you're there by the end. And not a lot of teachers, not a lot of PD, professional development presenters, can say that. I just did I had a group in Long Island, New York, right, last week. And, I'm not from New York, but my whole family's from New York, right? They all grew up there. So it could be a tough crowd, just the New York mentality is just sort of a little that tough of a crowd. They loved it at the end. They were coming up to me saying, this was a good day. Somebody walked up to me and said, this was a good day. We needed this because of what you just said. I mean, the sentiment with a lot of school boards and school districts, yes, that there is a brokenness to it to a degree, and I think that's because certain districts have allowed politics to enter their school boards and their school districts and teaching, and it shouldn't be like that. They've allowed personal agendas into it, and they've created these standardized tests that I don't think accurately capture the whole child, right? So that puts a lot of pressure on our teachers and our admins to follow a very strict path of curriculum that does not allow for a lot of extra creativity, things that we would do. I remember just writing stories and doing curriculum, but just having the opportunity to do extra fun stuff with your mind that was unlock the creative part. And I think a lot of that is not there as much. So that puts pressure on the system, on the teachers, on the admins, and then you have parents from my guard and the old guard who have come in saying, what is this? It wasn't like this when we were younger, and the way you're teaching things in Common Core. We did a math problem with my son a week ago, and I have my PhD, I have my master's degree. I couldn't figure out what it was. This is first grade math. I'm looking at this and I'm like, what? I'm like, this is embarrassing. But it was just a weird, different style of like showing your work. So whatever the case is, you're getting parents who are getting upset, and you throw all that in, and it's a combustible system, right? Very, very combustible. All those elements I just said. So now you have somebody like me coming in doing professional development, not talking about any of that. We're not talking curriculum. We're not talking about that. But we're talking about them, their mental health, their positive thinking, and how it can be improved. Who wouldn't want that? Okay, yeah. Isn't that what that's why people are listening now. That's why they listen to my show. That's why they listen to do podcasts and read books, because I think generally people want to feel good. They want to be positive and have good relationships and not feel so, under the thumb by bosses or employers or curriculum, especially in teachers. So it can be a breath of fresh air, but it definitely takes the right person and the right material to break through to the teachers. And I'm up for the challenge, no doubt.
Nice. Okay, so that I think that's a really interesting dynamic to take on the teachers and their mental health, rather than going after perhaps say the curriculum and all the other things, because at the end of the day, if you're able to improve the the attitude of the teacher, I think overall it improves the curriculum that they're teaching in its entirety. So let me ask this question: How do you help improve a teacher's mental health?
Well, what we try to do is get them to embrace the concepts from this book. And they read the Energy Bus book, embrace the concepts of it, and the book talks all about, it does talk about how you're the driver of your bus, you're in control of your emotions, your attitudes, your beliefs, your feelings. So we get them to try to understand that they own that piece, they own their emotions, they own their reactions. So a lot of times we feel like, well, others cause me to be upset. No. We have to shift out of that mentality and saying, I can choose whether or not I want to get upset or not at this situation, right? So when you do that, you flip the script and you're more in control of yourself. So that helps. We teach them about vision, and we teach them about purpose, having a vision, sharing the vision, driving with purpose. And as I talked about earlier, if you have a strong vision of what you want your classroom or your family or yourself to look like, that's going to help give you a direction on things you need to do to accomplish that and execute it. So that makes you productive because you're always working towards something.
Yeah.
We get them to think about their why, which is purpose. Why? And we always talk about driving with purpose. Well, why did you want to get into education? We have a conversation about this. This is a whole section of the PD. Like, you're sitting here, you've been here. Some of these people have been here 20, 30 years. I had somebody last week, 45 years. And I always like to say, and then we always have first year people too. Why? Like, why are you here first year, and why are you still here year 45? Like, what's driving you? So I get them to talk about that. And if they understand what's driving them still, why they're still in this, why they went into it in the first place, what's their why, that helps them to be more resilient. Because
Yeah.
when you go back to your why, we don't get burned out because of what we do. We get burned out because we forget why we do it. So if
Mm.
you can get the teachers to go back to their why, that just helps them to not to avoid the burnout,
Yeah.
to stay positive. Go back to your roots, right? Go back to those roots, embrace that, and that's going to fuel you for sure. So we
Yeah.
talk about these. We talk about these things that are not the things that are not talked about as much in school.
Yeah.
Loving each other, good relationships, purpose, vision, ownership, and you combine those things in a half day or a full day, and people walk away feeling a lot better and a lot more optimistic about their future.
Mm. Well, let's look at just one of those. You talked about emotions. You started off with emotions, and I think we live in a funny time where uh, people don't really believe that they have any control over their emotions, and but yet what you're saying is flying in the face of that.
Well, I think I think there's been a lot of elements in our society lately that have tested us and
Hmm.
have made us very emotionally responsive. We feel like we have to. There's so many different. Just open up the newspaper the last 4 years, right? Turn on the news. There's always something that can get you triggered. Okay, for lack of a better
Yeah.
term. So, and I think that there are some in the media and society and the powers that be that want you to be triggered and want you to be emotionally divisive and want you to be angry or upset because that will get you to click or tune in to wherever it is. So they want
Yeah.
you to not be in control of your emotions,
Yeah.
because if you're out of control of your emotions, you try to find areas that will validate how you're feeling. That's why people will
Hmm.
turn to one news network over the other, one over the other. They'll turn to these personalities over these celebrities, these political figures, whatever it is, to reinforce their emotional state, right? So
Hmm. And fear is such a strong driver. Some of the studies that I've read say that fear is like 4 times more powerful
sure,
than joy or happiness.
right.
I know that I did work with our correction services, the jails, penitentiaries, and one of the one of our lead psychologists had said, I had asked him the question about, why is it that we've got, it seems like we're devolving, we're having more and more crime, and he actually corrected me and said, actually, crime as a whole is actually down, but we have more media pushing that at us than ever before. And so he said, in fact, you and I used to get into a whole lot more trouble than the kids do nowadays because most of them are home playing video games. So there's a huge perception there to what you're talking about with regards to how we are taking in all of that from the media. Absolutely.
Fear is a big driver. You're exactly
Yeah.
right. And fear will make you do all sorts of crazy things. And it will, like I said, it will force you to seek out something to manage that. And that's why people will
Hmm.
turn to certain things that maybe they shouldn't all the time. Social media being one of them too, to reinforce or to calm down or to broadcast an opinion. So, in saying all that, if you can teach people to block a lot of those things out and be in control of yourself. Think for yourself. I saw somebody was wearing a shirt the other day online. It was like, think before it's illegal. It was something like that. Think before they make it illegal. It was something like that. And I love that, because the last 20 months, like, it's for myself and my family, it's all about staying in our lane. Like, that's been our that was sort of our COVID 2020 mantra, was stay in your lane. I didn't want to
Right.
be, I didn't want to be told what to do here, here, here. It was like, okay, we're going to do what's best for us and our family. And we were happy with those decisions, and we all stayed healthy and well. And I try to bring that mentality into into my work with teachers and schools, right? Own your emotions, think for yourselves, do your own research, and it's going to help you so much. Just be in more control of yourself, your identity, who you are.
Wow. There's something there for me as I'm hearing what you're saying. There's something there for me as I'm thinking about what it must be like for a teacher to be in the schools, hearing your message and coming back and saying, "Yeah, but you don't know what it's like here." Because I know that teachers, I've got friends that are teachers, and we're actively we're active in our schools with our kids, and so I'm always talking with them, and there is so much pressure on teachers to stay within some of these lines that our communities are putting on them. They're afraid to almost step out of some of these lines, and and this is where what you're talking about, I think, has so much value. Where you're talking about them being able to own their emotions and being able to own their decisions. Um, do you run into a lot of that cynicism and hey, you don't know what it's like, Doc. You don't know what it's like over here.
I'm sure there's some who think that, but I try to do my
Yeah.
research. Like I don't go into a school
Mm,
cold. Like
yeah.
I'm having multiple conversations with the principal, the assistant principals
Yeah.
leading up to the event, and figuring out who I'm speaking with, what's the
Yeah.
temperature of the audience, how receptive are they to this message. A lot of them,
Yeah.
they've already read the book. A lot of them have done the book study. They just want to bring in a speaker to reinforce.
Yeah.
So, and that's helpful. I haven't walked into a ton of situations where the school is an absolute disaster and they want to bring an energy bus to really reclaim
Right.
their prominence, their glory. I haven't, I welcome those schools. Those are the ones who really need this.
Hmm.
But I never go into a situation not having done the research. So,
Right.
and because what will happen is I'll use that information in the talk, so I can get on the same level with the people in my audience, with those teachers. If
Yeah.
I hear certain situations that have happened to them or things they've gone through, I'll reference them as we're talking, so they know that I've done my homework, I've done my research, and I
Hmm.
understand where it is they're coming from. And because if you're sitting in an audience, you want a message that's relevant for you, what you're going through at that moment. So I need to make sure I understand that about my audience to have success.
Mm. Well, I've heard you say in previous interviews where you've talked about oftentimes where we're just seeking validation or that we need validation. Um, can you say something to that with regards to the teachers that you're coming in contact with?
Well, it's a reason why a lot of us complain. And teachers, I love them, but they're big complainers. And you get a group of them together, and the principal's not around, they're gonna find something that they could potentially complain about. And it's true. Like I haven't worked in a school setting in about 5 years. I teach online. In addition to working for John, I teach higher ed courses online, so I can travel. But before 5 years ago, I was on a college campus, and
Hmm.
you would get everybody together in a room, and if the principal, if the dean or somebody wasn't there, what are they doing? Complaining about students, policies, something. And it's like, oh my goodness. So, but why do we complain? We complain because we want somebody else to validate us. We want somebody else to
Hmm.
say, "Yeah, I know what you mean. You're exactly right. Oh, I get it." Or and kind of swirl around in that. So you're looking for that validation, and because you don't want to be alone in that type of thinking. And and,
Hmm.
and teachers can do the same thing, because if they really look, there is a lot to that they can complain about, but a lot of that
Hmm.
they can't control. They can't control a direction of curriculum, certain school board decisions, certain policies. They can't. So, and a lot of the stuff we complain about, we can't control at all. So I always look at that and say, well, listen, if you can't, if you want to complain, okay, well, let's bring some solutions to the table while we're complaining. Let's not just seek validation. Let's seek solutions. Let's talk about and say, you know what, I noticed this was happening here or this was wrong here. And somebody else should pipe up and say, yeah, what can we do about that? What do you think we should do? What can be done? Why can't the topic of conversation be the solutions and not just the problem? That's going to, if you're solution oriented, that's going to solve the problem or work towards it, versus those that are just complaining, being negative, which will not solve the problem at all. So that's where that validation kind of comes from a little bit.
What would you say is your greatest source of frustration these days?
Myself personally?
Yeah.
Non-work related, just sort of in general?
Sure.
How much time do you have? No.
How much time do you have?
We can all find something to complain about. I just think I'm just blown away sometimes by what people will believe and the things that they'll say on social media and in general, just with regards to COVID or society, just some of the thinking that's out there. To me, sometimes is just so polar opposite to what I believe or my family believes, and sometimes it's hard to look at some things and be like, wow, like that.
Come on,
that has logic to it. So
stop being so stingy. Give us something that's driving you crazy right now.
Well, I would definitely. I'm gonna definitely say just things that are put out. People posting on social media opinions about COVID or vaccines or things that don't necessarily have any logic or reasoning to it. They're just broadcasting it to broadcast it. Okay, where there's no fact behind it. It's just opinion. And I think it's driving misinformation. And I think it's driving a lot of just people surrounding themselves in one type of thought. So I don't think it's that healthy to be posting a lot of opinions and stuff on social media. I really don't. I don't think it helps a
lot. But I think part of that probably has something to do with the response, or perhaps the viral response that people are getting back. They're like, if you give an original thought, it gets passed over. Meanwhile, you say something about COVID, which has fear involved in it, and it'll get a whole bunch of views, a whole bunch of likes, shares, and the sort. I know that I just saw something last night where they were talking about, do you realize that the government gets a kickback from every single vaccine shot that they give out, on top of the tax money that they get from whatever the doctors are paying and their bills and the like. And so, do you realize the kickbacks that the government is getting? And of course, that thing just went ballistic.
And that's there's a lot of hot button things out there for sure. And I just try to, I try to tell people, listen, you want to have a voice, you should be involved, you should be active, but go and find other ways of when did social media become the end all be all to create change? To me, change is done on the grassroots level. Change is done by getting, going and speaking at board meetings and writing letters and trying to work on policy. And, that's where change comes from. Sometimes I think people post, it's just they don't do it. I think there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. If you do it with fact and research and stuff, okay, maybe it can help. But if you're just being emotional about it, I don't think it quite does a lot as good, or as much good as you hope it would.
I think there's a lot of power in what you're saying there, because I get asked the question, I'm in finance, I'm in real estate, and people will ask me, how did you get all these investors? I'm like, I did it the old fashioned way. I would have coffees and shake hands, and you talk to people and just meet with them one-on-one. That's what we had to do. That's what we had to do before this online world.
Right.
Right. But I mean, even I to be honest, I didn't even know how to use social media for that type of promotion in my world. So um I kind of agree with you that I don't know if there's another way than really just being involved in it and doing things. Although I don't know, that social media is kind of crazy because you can watch someone. We can have this video, this interview, and you are talking about how people can reclaim power in their life, get control of their emotions, be a force of positivity, and we'll see other videos like the COVID ones that you just talked about that'll get a whole bunch more likes and views, and that's sort of, it seems like that's just what people are looking for these days.
They are, and it's true. And they're also looking for an outlet. Like, people are frustrated. People are on both sides. They're angry, they're upset, or they're riled up. So of course you look for an outlet. And social media has become that outlet to express oneself, but it's done in a very emotional way. And are you really getting anybody to your side if you're pointing fingers, or you're name calling, or you're disparaging, or it's just too emotional? I don't think so. And I know, because the guy I work for, John Gordon, put out a video a few weeks ago, and I was really proud of him for doing this. But it was a video that was all research backed on why we should not need a government mandated vaccine, like the mandate. And it was very research backed, and he did it very respectfully. He said he was pro-vaccine, anti-mandate, and he would respond to people on the social media, because of course that creates a stir. But he would respond in a very respectful manner, and it was always pointing people back to the research. And I thought, okay, that's the way to do it. Like, if you're gonna put something out there, that's how you surround yourself in the armor of research and poise and tone, and be in control of your emotions.
Right.
And that will help you to pause before you click send. More people need to pause before they click send. I can't tell you the amount of stuff I saw last year in October when President Trump contracted COVID. I mean, and Melania, our first lady. So just the sheer amount of, just, and no matter what you felt about the man, just people wishing death and people wishing things, and these are friends, and I'm like, how could you put that out there? I said, no matter what you feel, how about you just hit pause and go about your day? Why even say anything? Like, I mean, so I think more of us need to just, that's where it all comes back to emotions. If we can be in more control of our emotions, we're going to do things in a much more logical way, and think through situations, and pause and take a step back, and it's going to help so many more things. So many more voids of negativity will not be filled anymore. So it's just something to think about, because it's a message I always take to wherever I go. We're always talking about the mindfulness of our emotions. And I think if you're a leader, people are looking to you for how to act, how to think and walk, right? People look to our leaders. So no matter what industry you're in, if you're listening, be mindful, because there's always somebody watching. Okay, I'm not talking about Big Brother. I'm talking about, employees or family or our kids. There's always people that have an eye on us if we're in a leadership role. And if they see us flying off the handle emotionally, they're going to think that's the norm and that's accepted. So while we shouldn't hide from our emotions and pretend they don't exist, no, we need to just be able to manage them better. That's all.
Wow. You mind if I switch back now to a different conversation? I'm
Absolutely.
I like what you were talking about there, but something that kind of nagged at me there that you were sharing earlier is that you talked about how you pivoted, realizing that communication was your thing, and realizing that you wanted to go further down that road. And you're an accomplished speaker. You've traveled around. You've spoken to all size crowds now. How have you been able to hone your public speaking ability? How have you been able to grow that? If someone was, especially because we like to help people that are and address people that are coming up, guys that are coming up, trying to figure out what to do, and they're watching you right now and going, "Hey, I'd like to do more public speaking. How can I get better at that craft?"
The only thing I could say honestly, and I teach public speaking as well. That's what I teach for the height of my university I work for. So I teach public speaking and I also practice it. And really, the way I've developed and honed my skills is just it's really comes down to experience. I mean, remember I told you a little while ago, I said not much will phase me now, audience wise. That's because I've had so many different audiences and experiences that I just sort of I've trial and error different activities I've wanted to do with certain audiences, different jokes or stories, and I can I now having gone through that, I can usually tell what type of story, what type of activity will hit better, and I'll lean more towards those. But that came from years of experience of trying things that didn't work as well, or stories that I didn't really feel as much, or telling other people's stories, which is not as personal. And I think that's what I've pivoted now the last 2-3 years to more just personal storytelling, my own stories, my own experiences, my own lessons instead of somebody else's.
Mm,
And that's helped the audience. I think that's helped me deliver a more genuine presentation, real presentation. And it's helped the audience to see me more as a human being and as a
mm,
father and a husband, as a person, and not just this guy on stage who they have no connection with. And
yeah,
that'll help you. So knowing your audience, trusting your preparation, but knowing that turning the personal into the powerful
mm,
is where it's at as a speaker. You make the personal into the powerful. That's what
yeah,
audiences need to connect with you more. So that's what I would definitely have to say to speakers that are kind of coming online is you just have to get out there.
yeah,
And, I would speak when I was first starting out with John for very low dollars, right? And just sometimes a lot of free stuff just to cut my teeth, just to kind of experience a whole variety of audiences. So that's never say no. All right, there's speaking engagements, no matter what it is, the answer is always yes, because you will learn something from any group, any crowd, any type of presentation you have. You will learn something from it.
yeah. Yeah, you just gave us a peek in there, and I want to ask you about this. How would you describe yourself as a father, as a husband?
The word that always comes to mind with me is serve. That's
Mm,
sort of my John Gordon has us do like a one word for the year, and that we're going to focus on, and he wants us to have a life word too. And I really believe my life word is serve. And when it comes to being a dad and being a husband, to me, the mark of a man is a jack of all trades. That's my own philosophy. Nobody else's. That's my own. Where I feel like the husband should be able to cook, clean, take care of the kids, drive them around, and work, and provide for their family, and be a good supportive spouse, and be a good communicator and listener. That's the jack of all trades. And I have certain friends and people elsewhere who are like, no, 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 my wife does all of the household stuff. I don't do any of that. Now, my wife and I have an equal share of responsibility, and she's lucky because I came into the relationship already being a clean and tidy person. Okay, like I already knew how to cook. I loved having a clean apartment and taking care of my own self. So that's definitely something I've taken into my marriage and into my the life of my boys, my two sons who are 6 and 4. Just trying to do anything I can for them and be present in their lives as much as possible. be supportive, be loving, and they know that I'm always going to be behind them 100%. But I'm also teaching them how to act when they get older. That it's normal to see their a dad figure, a husband figure, being active in the household, cleaning, cooking, doing all these things, whatever the household, whatever the family needs. A dad's role is to step up and do it well, and not expect a thank you, not expect an applause. You do it because that's the job, right? And that's the way I look at things. I say, words of affirmation are important to me for sure, but that's not why I try to go above and beyond in the household and with my kids. I do it because that's what I'm supposed to do, right? And that's what I believe. So that will transcend anything that I want to do for sure.
Was that something that you learned from your father, that you got from your dad? Did you see that, and is that how you came about that?
Not really. No. My dad and I really don't have a relationship, and so it's something that I really had to kind of, figure out on my own what kind of dad and husband I was going to be. So I think to me, I had a mom who was very, who worked hard and still provided for us and left dinner in the refrigerator when I'd come home from work, even though she had to go out for work, and expected us to do chores around the house. But I've always, like I said at the beginning, I've always been very driven and motivated, and those types of people are going to want to have their life in order and their setting in order, their house, their finances, their mind, their stuff. So I try to be organized. I've always sort of been like that, and it's helped significantly for sure.
Wow, what I just heard there was that you just shared was, this difficulty made, or this thing that happened in your life, not having that healthy, or I'm not sure, you didn't use the word healthy or happy, but not having that relationship or that guidance from your father, it actually turned into something that you were attuned to. You were you've been intentional about being this in your life. And is that, it sounds like to me like part of that was because you didn't see that growing up.
You're exactly right, and I knew my dad up until about high school, college, but then we kind of had a long story. You can go back to one of my podcasts and listen to your listeners. I tell all the story about it, but kind of had a breaking point there. So I've used that lack of a relationship now into it. I've turned it into a positive, and I've tried to be the best father I can be, and I try not to put up any walls ever. I try to deal with things that are bothering me right there and not just sweep it under the rug. Try not to hold any grudges. I'm trying to do the opposite of what I experienced, in the final waning, years of our relationship. So that, and there's research to suggest that, the worst event in a person's life has turned into the best event of their life. And, and you could think back to all these leaders who have had these terrible things happen, and bankruptcies and failed elections and lost battles, and they go on and they become Lincoln and Washington and Sarah Blakely, who is the founder of Spanx, and she sold fax machines door to door, and now she's running $1 billion company, right? So all these things that have happened to mold us into who we are today, you're either going to be consumed by the pressure of that moment, you're going to use it as a crutch, the difficulties we've had growing up, or you're going to explode from there, and you're going to develop into something that you never thought you could be, or maybe you always knew you could be that, but it was just hidden deep within. So it just depends on where you want to go. The choice is always going to be up to you, no matter what your circumstances. And I don't care where you are, right? No matter what your circumstances. And it may be harder for some than others, but you always have a choice on where you go from where you find yourself, right? You can be in the worst situation in the world or the best. You still have to find a way to grow and improve. So that's just, it all comes down to choice.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. I it's funny, I actually talk to my kids about this often, where I say my greatest sources of pain in my life are, now when I look at them, are my greatest joy, because they are my greatest sense of power. I've learned the greatest lessons in my life from the most painful things that have happened to me, including almost dying on a table after a gang fight. And I've shared stuff like that. And you just look back and go, oh my goodness, if this happening, which seemed tragic at the time, it rebirthed me into a
Right.
different direction. And it those points of pain allow you the opportunity to be able to uh, look at it, consider it, and maybe change and choose something different.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
You just have to be willing to do that and willing to
yeah,
act.
yeah, yeah. I love it. I love it. I mean, you're talking leadership 101 right here.
There you go.
Let me just ask this one final thing. What's next for you?
What's next for me is, as far as from a speaking standpoint, writing a book for sure. That's on the list. That's coming. And I just think it's all, to me, it's all about growing our brand, growing this school's initiative,
Hmm.
getting to 100 schools, getting to 1,000 schools, getting up that high where we're just, round the clock, nonstop. And I know there's potential there for that, and we're putting systems in place to really market and grow this program, because we know that it's doing a world of good for our schools that are out there. And I
Hmm.
just want to continue to be instrumental in its success, but always to be reminded. I always try to just try to I always try to hold on to that joy I had, that curious joy I had as a kid of wanting to be a speaker. And anytime I get booked now, even 20 years later, and I've get booked all the time, but now I try to still maintain that excitement level, be like, yes, got booked again, got booked here, I'm going there, and not just take it for granted,
Right.
and try to maintain. So I want to maintain that humbleness, that think like a rookie mentality, as this program grows,
Yeah.
as the speaking continues to increase. Think like a rookie, still work hard, still take every audience seriously, and still put in the preparation, and still try to learn after every talk, and not just rest on success. Because if you start resting on success, if you're coasting, you're declining, the way I look at it. So, and I
Mm.
don't ever want to do that.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. If people want to get more of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They are welcome to follow me on social media first, too, at Jim Van Allen, VANALLAN. That's Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And they can also, I'll give my email out if that's okay. I don't mind people emailing. Jim at johngordon.com. Jim at JON Gordon.com for all school related. If you're part of a school, or if you know somebody, if you think your child's school needs some more professional development and positive thinking, let's have a conversation. I'm not pushy at all. It's just having a conversation to see if school's program training would be a good fit, because we want to make sure it's going to be a good fit for sure moving forward. So that's my email, Jim at johngordon.com. And our website is energybusschools.com, energybusschools.com.
That's awesome. So if teachers or principals are seeing this, they should get in contact with you,
Please.
because you come up to Canada.
I have,
You would
so
leave sunny Florida for Canada?
in a heartbeat, I was close. I had a gig in Buffalo 5 years ago, and
That's close.
we flew into Toronto, and we did
Oh,
Toronto, and I love Toronto. With my
yeah.
wife and I, we had a 1.5-year-old, just a 1.5-year-old at the time, and she was pregnant. We did the
Yeah.
whole city. We did the whole
Ah,
city. We loved it. So
yeah.
I would love to get more into. We've had some requests from some Canadian schools, but the border's
Mm-hmm.
been closed. So we haven't been able to come up there.
Yeah.
But absolutely, Canadian schools for sure. I just talked to a school in Saudi Arabia. So we're trying to be much more international for sure.
Yeah. Well, your message is applicable anywhere on the planet, right? Because as you mentioned, you're not addressing the curriculum, but rather the faculty themselves, right? So
right,
that's
exactly.
brilliant. Well, Doc, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Any parting words?
No, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate everybody listening. And I think people can keep growing, keep learning, and keep being mindful for sure.
Love it. Love it. Thank you very much. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys again next time on the Leadership to Wealth podcast. Take care.